Welcome back to the deep dive. If you've ever felt like, well, like your spiritual life is running on empty, that feeling, of just being depleted, and maybe at the same time dealing with this constant barrage of information, it can be overwhelming. Well, if that sounds familiar, then this deep dive is definitely for you. Our mission today is pretty focused. We're tackling that kind of invisible struggle,
Yeah.
that feeling that your tank is dry, and that no matter how much effort you put in, you're just not getting any relief.
That feeling, yeah. It's exactly what the sources you shared are getting at. It's what a lot of people call spiritual dryness. And it's tricky, isn't it? Because the thing you instinctively want to do, try harder, push through, actually seems to make it worse.
Right. It's counterintuitive.
Totally. Activities that are supposed to refresh you, maybe time set aside for reflection or prayer,
Yeah.
they just stop working. They start to feel heavy, like a chore. Or, as the source material put it so vividly, it feels like your prayers just sort of bounce off the ceiling.
Oof. Yeah. That hits home. High effort, zero return.
Exactly. It's the definition of running on fumes, and it is exhausting.
And you have to think, our modern world, it really piles onto this, doesn't it? We're constantly bombarded. Notifications, endless scrolling, just noise. And it's easy to mistake consuming information about faith for, actually connecting with faith.
That's a really critical distinction. Information versus connection.
So that's our mission for this deep dive. We're going to tackle this head on. We're pulling out 3 specific, powerful scriptures, anchors really, from the King James Bible, and we're looking closely at how the sources say they can be applied, how they're meant to refresh your faith and reignite your walk with God.
And we've structured it kind of like a path. 3 steps to move out of that exhaustion. First, we'll dig into Isaiah 40.31. That's about the paradox of waiting for strength. Sounds weird, but yeah. Second, we shift to Psalm 42.2. This helps diagnose that feeling of emptiness, that thirst, and points towards, well, true satisfaction. And finally, we'll unpack Matthew 11.2829. This offers a really practical prescription for finding rest when you're burdened and burned out.
It sounds like a journey that really challenges our default settings, our instinct to just hustle harder. So let's start right there. Section 1. This apparent contradiction. Finding strength not by doing more, but by being still. Okay, so our first scripture, Isaiah 40, verse 31. It's one of those passages that feels like a warm blanket, honestly, super encouraging. But it also seems to completely flip our modern work ethic on its head. It says, "But they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary, and they shall walk and not faint."
It's powerful, isn't it? What strikes me immediately is the sheer scale of the promise. And it all hinges on this one seemingly simple, almost passive action, waiting.
Passive, yeah. That's a word that trips people up, I think.
But look at what follows that waiting. It's not just about getting by or surviving.
Yeah.
It talks about a total shift in capability, but a renewal.
And the way the outcomes are laid out, it covers everything, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The whole spectrum of activity. You've got this promise of almost supernatural endurance for the active parts. They shall run and not be weary, and they shall walk and not faint. Running, that's like the intense bursts, the major challenges. Walking, that's the long haul, the daily grind. And the promise covers both. Sprint and marathon, no fatigue.
Right. The source material definitely highlights that duality, covering all bases, but it saves its sort of highest emphasis for that central image, the one that goes beyond anything humanly possible on the ground. They shall mount up with wings as eagles.
Ego.
Running and walking, even if you magically don't get tired, you're still earthbound, right?
Yeah.
But mounting up with wings, that suggests lift, elevation, freedom from the ground. It implies being powered by something totally outside yourself, beyond your own tired muscles.
Yeah.
It's about transcending the stuff that makes you tired in the first place.
Okay, so here's where the application gets really, really interesting, especially for today. The source material connects that spiritual dryness we talked about directly to this feeling of trying to run on our own strength, which is what we do, right? When we feel weak or overwhelmed, the world screams, push harder, grind, hustle.
Which just digs the hole deeper,
Yeah.
accelerates the burnout.
Exactly. So if the prescription here is to wait, that sounds almost irresponsible, doesn't it, in our hyper-productive world? How do you wait without just, giving up or becoming lazy? Where's the line?
That's the absolute core tension for us today, isn't it? Confusing passive laziness with what the scripture means by active waiting. And the sources we looked at draw a really crucial distinction here. Waiting, in this context, it isn't about doing nothing. It's not an absence of movement. It's an active surrender.
Right.
Surrendering control, surrendering self-reliance.
Okay. Active surrender. Break that down a bit.
It means consciously pausing the frantic effort that comes from you, the self-generated push, The instruction isn't just stop, it's wait upon the Lord.
Hmm.
It's about changing the source of your power, not necessarily stopping all activity forever.
So it's less about stopping movement and more about stopping the engine that's running on empty.
Precisely. And we need to understand that eagle imagery better, because it's not just poetic, it's mechanical in a way. We're not being told to flap our own wings harder when we're tired. We're being told to do something entirely different.
Like finding a different way to fly.
Exactly. Think about how an eagle actually flies efficiently. Yes,
Yeah.
it's powerful, huge wingspan, lots of muscle, and it uses a ton of energy flapping when it takes off, or if it gets caught in rough air. Flap, flap, flap. Hard work. But a smart, experienced eagle, it conserves energy, doesn't flap constantly. Instead, it actively looks for thermals, those invisible columns of rising warm air, or updrafts created by mountains or cliffs. Once it finds one, what does it do? It locks its wings, it circles. It allows the external power of the wind, something it didn't create, to lift it higher effortlessly.
Ah, okay. It catches a current that totally reframes waiting.
It does. Waiting isn't just sitting there passively and actively positioning yourself to catch that unseen powerful current. It's scanning the horizon for the updraft.
So it's not stagnation, it's alignment.
Perfect word, alignment. The strength, the renewal, it comes from aligning with that external power, not from trying to generate the lift yourself. The source is essentially arguing that when we're spiritually dry, we're wasting precious energy flapping our own tired wings, trying to get altitude on our own. The command to wait is the instruction to stop the pointless flapping and position our souls to catch the thermal of God's presence, His strength.
This speaks so directly to that feeling of information overload, too. When we're drowning in content, desperately trying to keep up, feeling frantic, the source seems to say the problem isn't necessarily the tasks themselves, but the pace and the source of our energy.
We're trying to fly at 30,000 feet by sprinting on the ground. It can't work. The problem is using purely human effort to achieve a result that requires, well, something more. So the application suggested is a deliberate slowing down. The source says, not rushing, not forcing.
What does that look like practically, though? Active surrender? Slowing down?
It looks like intentionally creating margin where there was none. Real practical space. Maybe it's resisting the urge to check your email first thing just for 5 minutes to breathe and orient yourself. Maybe it's consciously saying no to that extra committee or volunteer thing when you know you're already running on empty. It's a deliberate choice to stop relying only on yourself.
So the big insight here, the core takeaway from this passage, according to the sources, is that renewal isn't the prize you get after you've worked yourself to the bone. It's a byproduct. It comes through the act of strategic rest, this active waiting, this reliance.
Yes, you have to let go of the effort of self-renewal to receive the promised renewal. It completely redefines what productive work looks like when you're depleted. The only work required in that moment is positioning your wings, finding that alignment.
And that positioning isn't a one-off thing, is it?
No, it has to be sustained. Because the promise isn't just for a quick burst of energy, like the eagle mounting up. It's also for endurance. Run and not be weary. Walk and not faint. Once you catch that current, once that energy is renewed, then you're empowered to handle the running and walking, the daily demands, without that soul-crushing drain. The strength you receive is designed for the long haul.
That makes the connection back to you, the listener, really immediate. If you're feeling spiritually drained, maybe your primary job right now isn't to try harder. Maybe it's to stop trying to generate the energy yourself, find ways to align your wings, and consciously, actively wait for that updraft.
And the strength, this source insists, is guaranteed to follow the waiting.
Okay, but that requires trust, doesn't it?
Huge trust, especially when everything screams, do more. If you recognize that your dryness comes from trying to do it all yourself, the solution is this radical trust. Trusting that stepping back, pausing, aligning, it will actually yield more sustainable energy in the long run than just pushing forward completely exhausted. That decision, that act of trust, that is the act of surrender Isaiah talks about.
Okay, so we've explored finding strength through waiting, through alignment. Now we move to that immediate gut-level feeling when strength fails. That feeling of lack, which the next scripture calls thirst. This is Psalm 42, verse 2. My soul thirsteth for God, for the living God. When shall I come and appear before God?
Yeah, this verse is incredibly potent. It takes one of our most basic, desperate biological needs, thirst, and maps it directly onto our spiritual state. This isn't just wanting something mildly. The soul thirsteth. Think about it. In the ancient world, especially in arid regions, thirst wasn't just uncomfortable. It was an existential threat. It could mean death was near.
Wow. So applying that level of urgency to the spiritual condition, It's a really stark diagnosis, isn't it?
Undeniable. And notice how specific the object of the thirst is. It's not a vague longing for happiness or peace or just relief from stress. It's specific for God, for the living God.
That phrase, living God, why is that emphasis important here?
I think it's crucial. It defines the goal. It's not an abstract concept, not a set of rules, not even just a historical figure. It's a dynamic, present, relational reality, the living God. It immediately contrasts the true source of satisfaction with all the potential substitutes we might chase, things that are, well, lifeless by comparison.
Lifeless substitutes. We'll come back to that.
And the soul, deep down, knows what it truly needs. Even if our minds, our schedules, our anxieties are chasing something else entirely.
And the end of the verse captures that feeling of distance, doesn't it? When shall I come and appear before God? It's this deep yearning, like there's a gap the person is desperate to close. So the dryness isn't just emptiness, it's feeling cut off from the source of life itself.
Exactly. And this leads us right into the application the sources provide. Why does this intense thirst happen? The argument is that these dry seasons, they're actually functional. They serve a purpose. They act as a painful but necessary reminder that ultimately only God himself satisfies.
Okay, let's bring this back to our modern experience again. Information overload, constant stimulation. When we feel spiritually parched, what's our go-to reaction often?
We reach for substitutes, right?
Yeah. We open YouTube, find a sermon clip, we listen to a podcast, maybe this one, or a motivational speaker. We scroll through articles, compare ourselves to those curated, perfect lives on social media. We mistake activity, noise, information about God for actual connection with God.
That's a huge pitfall, especially for the learner type, someone seeking knowledge. You can consume terabytes of information about water and still die of thirst. These substitutes are tempting, aren't they? Because they offer an immediate hit, an external stimulus. It gives a fleeting feeling of engagement, maybe even insight, but often without requiring the vulnerability, the stillness, the honesty that true connection demands.
So we're trying to quench this deep existential thirst with what? Intellectual snacks, emotional jolts.
Or just distractions, yeah. The sources specifically warn against chasing two things, feelings or routine.
Okay, let's unpack that. How do we tell the difference between a healthy spiritual routine and chasing routine as a substitute? And what about feelings?
Good question. A healthy routine, I think, is like a channel or a pathway. It's something structured to help lead you towards connection with the living God. A substitute routine is when the routine itself becomes the goal, checking the boxes, doing the spiritual things. The focus shifts from connection to God to the performance of the duty. The moment it becomes about performance rather than presence, it stops being a pathway and becomes a dead end. It fails to satisfy the thirst.
Okay, that makes sense. And chasing feelings.
That's trying to replicate a past emotional high. Maybe a certain song always made you feel close to God, or a particular type of service. So you keep trying to recreate that specific feeling rather than just being present with where you are now, even if now feels dry and thirsty. You're chasing the emotional echo instead of seeking the present source.
So if substitutes don't work, what's the prescription? The sources seem very direct about it.
Incredibly direct. Bring the thirst honestly to God. No pretense, no trying to clean yourself up first. Just present the raw need.
But what does that actually look like? An honest, vulnerable prayer, especially if you feel like those prayers are just, hitting the ceiling.
Yeah, it's tough. The sources actually suggest a specific, almost minimalist prayer. Something like, Lord, I'm thirsty for you. Meet me again.
Right.
That's it. The honesty is right there, admitting the lack, admitting the need. It's not a fancy prayer. It's not asking for a 10-point plan to fix your life. It's a foundational cry of need. It bypasses all the performance, the routines, the shoulds, and gets straight to the soul's core hunger.
And the sources offer assurance with that, right?
Yes, a powerful assurance. It states very clearly that God honors that hunger. The action here isn't about somehow overcoming the thirst by willpower or forcing yourself to feel satisfied when you don't. The action is simply naming the thirst and presenting it, and trusting that the hunger itself, that spiritual ache, is actually a legitimate form of prayer that God recognizes and will respond to.
So even if you feel nothing else, you can usually still feel the thirst, the lack.
Exactly. And that thirst, the source material argues, is actually evidence. Evidence that your soul is still alive, still oriented towards its true source, even if it feels distant. In this view, the dryness isn't a failure, it's functional. It's like an alarm bell ringing. It's designed to drive you away from the superficial fixes, the endless content, the performance treadmill, the emotional quick hits, and push you towards the only thing that can truly satisfy.
That really reframes the struggle, doesn't it? Dryness isn't necessarily a sign you failed. It might be
What?
a diagnostic tool, a compass needle swinging violently away from the noise and pointing back to the source. It's like the soul itself rejecting the cheap alternatives the world keeps pushing.
That's a great way to put it. Practically, for you listening, if you want to apply this, it might mean deliberately carving out some quiet space where those substitutes are just not there, physically absent. Maybe it means actually pausing the phone, closing the laptop, and just sitting with the raw discomfort of that thirst for a few minutes, maybe journaling about that need, and just repeating that simple, honest declaration, Lord, I'm thirsty for you. That uncomfortable stillness, that honest admission, that's where the satisfaction is ultimately promised.
Okay, waiting for strength through alignment, diagnosing the thirst and bringing it honestly. Now let's move to the third piece. The practical step of actually dealing with the burnout, the burden that often causes the dryness and thirst. All right, our final step in this deep dive takes us from understanding the need to the practical solution for burnout. It's found in Matthew chapter 11, verses 28 and 29. And this is really the ultimate invitation for anyone feeling completely drained. Jesus says, "Come unto me, all you that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn of me, for I am meek and lowly in heart, and you shall find rest unto your souls."
This passage is just soaked in practicality and mercy, isn't it? It immediately calls out its target audience, covering basically both sides of exhaustion. The invitation is for those who labor and those who are heavy laden. And that distinction, I think, is really important for understanding burnout.
Okay, explain that distinction. Labor versus heavy laden.
Labor seems to point to the active side, the external struggle. The constant effort, the striving, the endless work that just drains your energy, grinding it out. Heavy laden feels more internal. It's the consequence of all that labor, maybe. The feeling of being crushed, weighed down, burdened by anxiety, by expectations maybe from others, maybe from ourselves.
Yeah, I can feel both of those, the doing and the weight of the doing.
Exactly. And the promise made to both groups is incredibly direct and unconditional. I will give you rest. Notice, it's not, if you work harder for me, then I'll give you rest. It's not a reward earned down the line. It's a gift offered right at the start. You come, bringing your exhaustion, your burden, and rest is the immediate exchange.
Okay, but then comes the next part, which often causes a bit of a mental roadblock for people. After the promise of rest, there's a command, "Take my yoke upon you and learn of me." And the reaction is often, "Wait, I just came because I'm exhausted and burdened. Why are you giving me a yoke? Isn't that more work?"
That reaction is totally understandable, but it reveals how crucial it is to grasp what kind of rest is being offered here. The rest isn't about collapsing into inactivity. It's not the absence of all responsibility. It's about replacing one kind of burden, a crushing, self-driven one, with a completely different kind, an aligned partnership. We really need to understand the metaphor of the yoke.
Yeah, let's get into the details of the yoke. How did it work? What's the significance?
Well, historically, a yoke had two main functions, especially in that agricultural context. First, it physically linked two animals, usually oxen, to pull a plow or a cart together. Often, it would pair a stronger, experienced ox with a younger, less experienced one.
Okay, the master and the apprentice, basically.
Kind of, yeah. And the physics of it is key. The experienced animal, the stronger one, bears the majority of the weight and sets the direction. The primary job of the younger, weaker animal isn't to strain with all its might. It's to stay aligned, to learn the rhythm, to walk in step with the experienced partner.
So when Jesus says, "Take my yoke," he's positioning himself as the experienced, strong partner.
Exactly. The one who knows the way, who has the strength. The heavy-laden person isn't asked to suddenly become strong or pull the whole load alone anymore. They're invited to be yoked with the expert. The weight is effectively transferred.
So the yoke represents partnership, alignment, but also learning.
Yes, that's the other crucial part.
Yeah.
Partnership and pedagogy teaching. That's why the command isn't just take my yoke, it's take my yoke upon you and learn of me. The rest is actually found within that learning process, within the alignment. You're not expected to figure it all out, generate the strength, or navigate the path on your own. You're simply asked to walk in sync with the master, whose pace is perfect, whose direction is right.
Okay, so this helps define the two different yokes then. There's the yoke we bring to him, that heavy burden of constant anxious striving, maybe fueled by comparison, perfectionism, the digital pressure cooker.
The yoke of self-reliance, essentially.
Right. And then there's the yoke he offers in exchange, which looks like the burden of simply staying aligned, learning his ways, trusting his strength. So the application when you're weary isn't do nothing. It's stop doing it that way under that crushing yoke and learn to do it this way under this lighter yoke.
Precisely. And the sources explicitly define the rest given here as deep, soul-level rest. It's not just about physical rest, like taking a nap, though that might be part of it. It means you could still be active, still have your job, your family, your responsibilities. But the internal burden, the spiritual weight, has shifted. It's no longer solely on your anxious soul, terrified of failure. It's shared. It's carried primarily by the partner in the yoke.
And there's one final piece of assurance in the verse that makes this possible, right? The reason why this yoke is manageable.
Yes, the character of the one offering the yoke.
Yeah.
For I am meek and lowly in heart. That description is the absolute guarantee that this yoke won't be another crushing burden. If the master were harsh, demanding, proud, the yoke would be terrifying. Impossible standards, constant fear of messing up.
But meek and lowly, that suggests gentleness, patience.
Exactly. It means the standards are gracious, the requirements are tailored to you, the relationship is patient, the burden is light because the giver is good. It's his character that defines the nature of the yoke, ensuring that even while you're walking, learning, participating, your soul can actually find rest.
This connects so clearly to how the sources talk about burnout. Burnout is defined as that heavy burden that comes from trying to do it all ourselves. And the solution is explicitly not to do more, but to come to him. This passage is the open door, the invitation back into his presence to make that exchange.
It really is. So the key takeaway here is this synthesis. You replace one burden, the exhausting one of self-reliant labor, stress, anxiety, maybe fueled by digital demands and comparison, with another burden, the yoke of learning, alignment, dependence on him. And the result of that exchange, paradoxically, is deep, profound rest for your soul. It's a radical shift in who's in charge, how you operate, and that brings peace, even amidst external pressures.
It really ties all three scriptures together beautifully, doesn't it? When you feel the dryness and thirst, Psalm 42, the response isn't to just flap your wings harder in panic, Isaiah 40. It's to stop, wait, align, and then consciously come and take on the lighter yoke offered, Matthew 11. Hashtag outro.
So if we kind of pull back and look at the whole picture from these three passages, we've explored these profound promises, the dynamic, almost effortless renewal from Isaiah, finding strength by waiting and aligning, then the honest diagnosis and the path to true satisfaction from the psalm by acknowledging our thirst for the living God. And finally, the practical exchange offered in Matthew, finding true, soul-deep rest by taking his yoke and learning from him. Taken together, it really offers a coherent methodology, a way to navigate out of that spiritual dryness and burnout.
It really does. It's a path marked by, strategic surrender instead of frantic effort, honest need instead of pretending we're okay, and transferring the burden instead of trying to carry it all.
Well said.
And that closing thought from the source material provides such crucial reassurance, especially when you're in that dry place. The idea that feeling dry, struggling, feeling like you're spiritually flat, it doesn't mean God left you. That is so vital to hear, isn't it? Because it often feels like absence or failure.
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
And that's the fundamental reorientation the sources are pushing for. Instead of seeing dryness as abandonment, or maybe even punishment for not trying hard enough, the suggestion is that it may be his way of drawing you closer. Think about it. When your usual methods, your routines relying on certain feelings, your own best efforts, when they finally stop working, when they run out of steam, that emptiness, that void, actually creates an opportunity for a deeper kind of connection, one based on dependence and trust, not just performance or habit.
Right. And we've spent this time detailing 3 specific ways, based on these scriptures, to respond to that drawing. First, waiting, actively positioning ourselves to catch that external current of strength. Second, thirsting honestly, bringing our raw need for satisfaction directly to the source, not substitutes. And third, coming intentionally exchanging the heavy burden of self-reliance for the lighter yoke of learning and partnership.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, let's bring it right back to that first principle from Isaiah 40.31 and make it really practical. If spiritual dryness is, at its core, a signal to stop running on your own fumes, to stop relying solely on your own exhausted strength, and instead to start waiting, aligning. Then here's the question, the provocation for you, the learner listening right now. What is one specific thing, maybe even a small thing, some non-essential action or activity that you can consciously choose to pause this week?
Okay, one specific thing to pause.
Yeah. What self-imposed burden? Maybe it's that compulsive checking of notifications. Maybe it's saying yes to one extra commitment you don't have the capacity for right now. Maybe it's that hour of scrolling that just numbs you out instead of refreshing you. What one thing can you intentionally set down just for a bit to create that necessary space, that margin? Space for the kind of waiting, the kind of alignment, the kind of presence that leads to the rest God promises. Because according to these sources, that single conscious act of pausing, of surrendering that little bit of control, that might just be the very first step toward mounting up with wings as eagles.